During World War II, the forces of Nazi Germany found themselves in fierce confrontations with a diverse array of Allied forces. But what were the Germans' perceptions of these adversaries? The answer to this question is far from simple, as it's steeped in complexity and subjectivity. In this video, we'll delve into a few examples that provide valuable insights into the German perspective, culminating in our opinion on which Allied forces the Germans most dreaded facing in battle. Unfortunately for the USSR, Adolf Hitler subscribed to a conspiracy theory that posited Jews as the masterminds behind the Bolshevik Party. To Hitler, this meant that the Soviets were not only Slavs, but also under the alleged control of Jews. As a result, when he launched his invasion of the Soviet Union, Nazi propaganda began to advocate for their complete extermination. In Hitler's eyes, every Slavic man, woman, and child had no right to live. This invasion, known as Operation Barbarossa, saw Hitler's forces commit numerous atrocities against captured Red Army soldiers. Many of these soldiers were executed on the spot, while millions more were sent to POW camps, slave labor camps, concentration camps, and extermination camps. The conditions in these camps were nothing short of horrific. At least 3.3 million Soviet POWs perished in Nazi camps during the war, a staggering 57% of all Soviet POWs. The majority of these deaths resulted from slow starvation. While Hitler initially enjoyed great success with his invasion, his forces ultimately failed to crush the Soviets, particularly during the Battle of Stalingrad. This battle saw the destruction of the German Sixth Army and marked a dramatic turning point in favor of the Soviets on the Eastern Front. By this point, the Soviets had demonstrated that they were far from the subhumans depicted in Nazi propaganda. They could fight fiercely, and they could endure unimaginable hardships. As the Soviet counteroffensive advanced toward Berlin, the contempt many Germans held for the Soviets transformed into fear. After all the horrors that German soldiers had inflicted on the Soviet people, both soldiers and civilians alike, it was now time for the Red Army to exact its revenge. They sought retribution for every Soviet corpse, for every village that had been burned by the Germans. Many German soldiers chose to flee to the Western Allies' front lines, hoping to surrender to them rather than face the wrath of the Red Army. While Hitler viewed the Soviets as Untermenschen, or subhumans, he saw the British differently. To him, the British, with their Anglo-Saxon heritage, were Aryans. England was a natural ally for Germany, he once said. The English are our brothers. Why fight our brothers? However, when Winston Churchill refused to accept Germany's conquest of Europe, Hitler saw war with Britain as inevitable. Having previously claimed that the British were Aryans of good German stock, Hitler needed a reason to explain why they wouldn't ally with Germany. He concluded that the Jews must be the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating Britain's resistance. This provided Hitler with a justification for his war against Britain. As the conflict progressed, Hitler witnessed some of Britain's most significant defeats and still entertained thoughts of peace with them. After the fall of Singapore, he stated, "The British Empire will be doomed after the war unless the English come to their senses and sign an alliance with us." Some Germans perceived British commanders as overly cautious, leading to sluggish responses from British forces. This hesitancy sometimes worked to their disadvantage. For example, after capturing some British officers during the siege of Tobruk, German General Erwin Rommel reportedly commented, "Gentlemen, you have fought like lions and been led by donkeys." Despite these criticisms, the British were often regarded as formidable and professional soldiers. Wehrmacht General Siegfried Westphal noted in his book, The German Army in the West, the hardest, toughest in attack, and most persistent in defense were the British divisions. The uniformity of the British personnel was most striking. One saw not so much extraordinary audacity, but the absence of failures. In the skies over Britain, the Royal Air Force, RAF, more than proved its worth. The Germans seemed to hold a certain respect for the RAF's ability to produce aircraft. According to Hermann Göring, commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe, in 1940, I could at least fly as far as Glasgow in most of my aircraft, but not now. It makes me furious when I see the Mosquito. The British knocked together a beautiful wooden aircraft that every piano factory over there is building, and they give it a speed which they have now increased yet again. There is nothing the British do not have. They have the geniuses, and we have the nincompoops. While Hitler may not have held the French in as high regard as the British, he certainly didn't see them as Untermenschen either. As an artist, he had a deep appreciation for French culture and had long harbored a desire to visit Paris. Upon arriving in the French capital after the Battle of France, Hitler's architect Albert Speer recounted, Hitler went into ecstasies about the Opera Garnier's beauty, his eyes glittering with an excitement that struck me as uncanny. Leading up to the Battle of France, Hitler's generals believed that his offensive plan was a reckless gamble. The French had a formidable defense in the form of the Maginot Line and boasted a military history that was highly respected. German General Franz Halder wrote, "None of the higher headquarters think that the offensive has any prospect of success. Even during and after the fall of France, many German soldiers continued to hold the French military in high esteem." During the Battle of Dunkirk, for instance, German Field Marshal Georg von Küchler remarked, "Despite our crushing numerical and material superiority, the French counterattack in several places. I fail to understand how these soldiers, fighting sometimes at 1 against 20, can find enough strength to make an assault. It's just stunning." German General Walter von Reichenau also praised the French defense at Dunkirk, simply stating, "The French troops have fought like lions." But admiration for the French was not limited to their performance at Dunkirk. The Free French forces mounted an outstanding defense during the 1942 Battle of Bir Hakeim in Italian Libya. Their resilience earned the respect of German General Friedrich von Mellenthin, who wrote, "Some British officers have insinuated that French morale gave way, but in the whole course of the Desert War, we never encountered a more heroic and well-sustained defense." Hitler himself concurred with von Mellenthin's assessment. Speaking to a journalist after Bir Hakeim, he said, "This is new evidence of the thesis I have always defended. The French are, after us, the best soldiers in Europe." While Hitler might have had a certain respect for the French, his views on Americans were far less favorable. Nazi propaganda portrayed Americans as a mongrel race, tainted by Jewish and African blood, and reduced to a nation of gangsters and thugs. Hitler once remarked, "I don't see much future for the Americans. It's a decayed country, and they have their racial problem. My feelings against Americanism are of hatred and deep repugnance." Everything about the behavior of American society reveals that it's half Judaized and the other half negrified. On the battlefield, German opinions of American soldiers were mixed. Some Germans believed that the Americans cheated by leveraging their vast industrial capacity rather than their skill to secure victory. In About Face, The Odyssey of an American Warrior, author David Hackworth recounts an exchange he had with a German POW. When Hackworth asked why, if the Wehrmacht produced such brilliant soldiers, the German was a POW and not him, the German replied, "I was an 88 mm anti-tank battery commander. Every time the Americans sent a tank, we knocked it out. They kept sending tanks, and we kept knocking them out until we finally ran out of ammunition. The reason I'm here is that the Americans didn't run out of tanks." Other Germans perceived American soldiers as lacking discipline and appearing poorly dressed. Dr. Otto Schranzmuller commented, "The American Army is fine a collection of individual physical specimens, but from the standpoint of military discipline, it is a mob, pure and simple. The men appear slouchy. The officers do not stand out from the men in appearance as they do in any European army. Yet there were also Germans who regarded American soldiers as honorable foes." General Karl von Einem's chief of staff, according to an American military report, said, "I have found your American army the most honorable of all our enemies. You have also been the bravest, and in fact the only ones who have attacked us seriously in this year's battles. I therefore honor you. and now that the war is over, I stand ready to accept you as a friend. From the anecdotes presented in this video, it seems that of the USSR, Britain, France, and the United States, the Germans feared Soviet soldiers the most. The Germans perceived the Soviets as unrelenting warriors who could endure staggering losses and still push forward, burning with a desire to exact vengeance on the Reich. However, this is just our opinion based on a handful of quotes. So what do you think? Do you agree? Or do you think the Germans feared British, American, or French forces more than the Soviets? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, History Intrigued, for more captivating insights into history's most intriguing moments.